Self-esteem comes from achieving a difficult task.
What's happening, everybody? It's your man, Andreula, with another fantastic guest, Dr. AnnMarie. Ronda Rousey's mom, guys. We got her on, and we're going to break down how she became a judo champion, how Ronda became a judo champion, the other daughters, parenting tips, what she's doing currently, how she's changing the world, and she literally is changing the world, starting with children. So she's extremely fascinating to me. She is a role model, and she's somebody we should be looking up to. Read her blogs. She has a statistics blog. She has a parenting and judo blog, and she's got 7 generation games. And if you're watching the video, that's what you're seeing, a graphic there. So go ahead. If you love the episode, don't worry about liking it or sharing it. Just go to 7 generation games and donate a couple gifts, a couple games to some children in need. You're doing so many things. You've said in the past you're multifaceted, and I don't think it could be any more true. You've raised 4 incredible daughters. Previously, I was worried if I had a daughter, it would be much more difficult. But then you see how your daughters, of course, Ronda, the way she turned out and being a role model even for guys, it's so impressive. On top of that, your blog, it goes deep. And you always talk about writing a parenting book, and I think you already have. And there's so many different topics we can go into. 7 generation games, which I downloaded yesterday, and I was really surprised at the quality of the 3D.
Oh, thank you.
Initially, you start going into it, and the story starts up. And if I was a child, I would be extremely happy if that was part of my class. Have you found?
And that was quite a sell and quite a leap of faith for the schools, because we go in and say, we would like you to replace math class with a game twice a week. And you can imagine the reaction from the average teacher. And and we did a Kickstarter campaign too, and I knew some of the people who backed us on Kickstarter, and some of them it was $25, $50, but I knew for some of those people that was, if they had gas to drive around that weekend or they stayed home, and they gave the money to us. So I went back to my team. I don't know if I can swear on this, but went back to my team and said, guys, we cannot fuck this up.
Sure.
We have, for kids in 4th grade, they don't get that year back. So it's been something I wanted to do my whole life. And it's funny because lots of people, they go and they become a world champion in judo, and then they go and they sell mats, or they open a judo school. They don't go and get a PhD in applied statistics and make computer games. But that was sort of my second act that I wanted to do.
And you started your blog in 2007.
Yeah, I think that the judo one, and then I do another blog on statistics and small business, and I started that in 2008. So yeah, I do 2 of them.
The Julia group.
Yeah.
Statistics are, for me, one of the more difficult topics to comprehend. And I had written so many questions, but do you feel like your judo training and statistics have any... Do you use a lot of statistics in saying, statistically, I'm better at maybe using the arm bar here against this opponent?
Exactly. And, it's funny, but when I was younger, I really, the first time I heard there was a national championships in judo, I was probably 12, and I wanted to win it. Here, they're doing guarding or something else. I'm sure.
Don't worry about this.
So I decided I wanted to win the national championships, and I did not have the resources that a lot of other people had. I didn't, my family didn't have money to pay for me to travel all around the world to tournaments and camps. I was going to college at Washington University in St. Louis, which is in the Midwest. There weren't a lot of other people to train with, and on top of that, I injured my knee when I was 16. I've had it replaced since, but I competed all those years. So I thought, what advantages do I have? And one of the things I came up with is, well, I'm smarter than a lot of people. And that sounds conceited to say, but I was in college at 16. I graduated with my bachelor's at 19. So obviously I was pretty smart. So I thought, well, how can that be effective in judo? So I tried, long before it became a thing, to analyze my competition, to look at what do other people do. And I figured, well, most people don't spend that much time in mat work. So I'm going to focus on that, because that's an opportunity to focus where most other people don't. And then there's 4 ways to win in judo. You can throw people, you can hold them down, you can choke them, you can armbar them. So 3 of those ways are on the mat. So it seemed like it was a better bet that way. And then the other thing I noticed, and I don't know that this has to do with statistics so much as just one of the things you learn in statistics and math in general is to analyze things, to try and take something apart and see what are the individual components. And one of the things that is a real opportunity that people very seldom capitalize on is transition. As you throw somebody, you can go into an armbar, you can go into a choke or a pin. And the places that have the most judo and the most advantages don't practice that transition because there's too many people on the mat. So if you've got 100 people all working out in a confined space and you throw somebody, you get up right away because somebody else will fall on you or step on you. If you're working out somewhere where there's only half a dozen of you, you have that luxury. So I actually, through much of my life, tried to turn disadvantages into advantages. You know, that would be one example. Another example would be when I blew my knee out, I figured, well, I could quit judo or I could try to just focus on mat work. And I knew that it was a very well-kept secret when I was competing how bad my knee really was. I knew that if I took you down, that might be my only chance because I might not make it through a match without my knee going out. So I tried very hard to make it so that when we went down for the first time, that was the end.
Wow. It's pretty incredible when you start marrying, I guess, statistics and mathematics, which to me seems like a slower process. You're going to sit with it for a while, and then the split-second reactions you're going to probably be performing as an athlete. So just fantastic. And transitions, as any fan of MMA will see, now the transitions are some of the most critical points in the match. You're basically, and Ronda is a master at capturing the correct moments and transitioning. How's her knee, by the way?
It's good. She got cleared to go back to not to competition, but to training about a week ago, and I just saw her last night because they just had the premiere, and she was back at practice, and her and the coach were arguing about if she was going to go to practice tomorrow or not because he thought she should take a day off with all the media and the premiere last night, and she thought she shouldn't, and they were debating on it.
I completely, it's so surreal. So you were at the premiere of Expendables 3.
Yes.
And you're watching your daughter on the big screen.
Yes.
What was that feeling like?
It was really good. And, you know, I think Rhonda was a little nervous. She was sitting with us because all 4 of her sisters and I came. And I'm not a big movie person. You know, people always say, how do you get so much done? You know, you write a book, you run a company, you have 4 kids. Well, I don't watch TV. I almost never go to movies. So it's just not my kind of thing. And I'd certainly, if I went to a movie, I wouldn't go to some action type of thing. But it was really good. You know, it was what you would expect to go to an action movie. A lot of people being shot and blowing up, and there wasn't a lot of Shakespearean dialogue. But it was a good story, and it was good, and she looked good in it. And yeah, so and her little sister Julia said on the way back, she goes, you know, Rhonda is a really good actress, I think, because when I was watching her up there, it seemed like she was a different person, and that's what acting should be.
That's cool.
So she did good.
When they make a movie on Rhonda's life, Julia could probably play Ronda as
well,
her younger.
They did. They actually did this documentary. I don't know if you saw it on TV, Breaking Ground, and you could buy it, like, no, I don't know, on Amazon or Walmart or wherever. And it's funny because a lot of people would see it and they'd say, well, how did you have the foresight to get those videos of Ronda doing judo and drilling and training when she was just like 13 or 14 years old? Did you know that she was going to be this big? And I said, no, that's Julia. So they look so much alike.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What's called Breaking Ground?
Yeah. It's like Breaking Ground, the Ronda Rousey story.
I thought I did my research. I didn't come across it. I have your judo book, the title. I have it on Kindle.
Winning on the Ground.
Winning on the Ground. Yeah. And your blogs are fantastic, obviously. And I was thinking about how can we really focus and give this interview a lot of value to the listeners. And I was thinking parenting. If you were my mom, obviously I love my mom, but my mom, she didn't give me the, I guess, tough love aspect, which a lot of parents seem to leave out. They don't want their child to experience any kind of maybe negativity from the parent. Is that something you came in as a game plan before the children were born, or you developed that type of life lesson teaching?
Well, some of it, I was in college at 16. I had left home the year before that. I was in foster care for a while. So really, from about 13 on, I was winging it. People, when their kids are 15, 16, 18 years old, they often think about, well, what would my parents have done? Well, my parents went around. I was living at 17. I was living in Japan as a junior in college. So I pretty much was making up as I went along, and the same, with coaching Ronda when she was little. So I just tried to figure it out the best I can. I think one of there are a couple of lines, a friend of mine, and this goes to coaching as well as parenting. He said to me, I'm 53 years old. I don't need a 15-year-old friend. And I think a lot of people try to be their kids, their athletes' friends instead of the parent or the coach. And there's a danger in there, especially when you're coaching, that the kid may quit. They may, if they're very talented, they may go somewhere else. Yes. Where the person, blows a little more smoke up their ass and tells them how great they are. I think if parents are divorced, often they're worried that you'll go live with mom or you'll go live with dad if I, lay down the line too much. And I have to worry about that too much. I mean, when my husband was alive, he obviously had my back. And when he passed away, they were stuck with me.
Yeah, to make. Well, I'm really proud you made that decision. I'm sure when the girls were like, "Listen, Mom, don't tell me what to do," and you have to still keep the front on because you realize how critical this moment is to teach a lesson, and it's not being a harsh mom. It's just setting them up, coaching them for life.
There are times. Now the youngest is only 16, so I had 3 girls in 5 years, and then I had another one 11 years later. And so sometimes Julia will be all mad at me, and I will think, after having gone through this with 3 other kids and their adults, I know this is the right thing, but she will be so upset. Like, she made the national games for soccer. And at first she didn't want to do it because none of her friends from school had made the same team. And I said, you're doing this. It will be good for you. It will be a stretch. And when you do difficult things, Bud Hirsch, the guy that wrote Cultural Literacy, has a really good line in his book. He said, self-esteem is not something your parents or teachers give you. It's not something that comes from a special program telling you we're all, great in our own way. Self-esteem comes from achieving a difficult task. And so you set your children to do things that are difficult, and each time they accomplish something, they get more confidence in themselves. I coach judo and in a middle school, and sometimes kids will be worried about going out for a tournament, and I've told kids this so many times, whether it's my own children or kids I coach, I will never ask you to do something that you're incapable of. It might be hard, you might fail at it, it's a possibility, but something that there's just no way you can do it, I'll never ask you to do that.
So you coach the groupers? Is that correct?
Gompers Middle School
Gompers.
In South Los Angeles.
Okay. And that you established that entire program, or Rhonda and you?
No, my daughter Rhonda established it. Okay. My second daughter Jennifer was doing her student teaching at Gompers, and Rhonda had just come back from the Olympics, and Jen brought Rhonda in as her visual aid when she was teaching about the feudal system in Japan and Budo and all that. She brought Rhonda in, and Rhonda, held Jennifer over her head in class and talked about judo and all this. And then the kids got all excited and said, could we have an after-school program to learn judo? And, Gompers, one of the teachers tells me not to call it Watts because he lives there, but you know what? It's real close to the Watts Tower. So whatever. Mm-hmm. They don't have any money for an instructor. And Jen said, do you know anybody that would teach judo after school for free? And Rhonda said, I'll do it, which is pretty amazing because at the time Rhonda was working 3 jobs. So she started the program and taught there for 2 years. And then her MMA career really started taking off, and when it did, she more and more was missing practice and said would have me come and do it for her. So in the end, I ended up taking it over.
Well, it's pretty good. I mean, I've seen you throw a lot of people, so I'd be extremely happy, and we'll support that program. I've read a post. I love your post, by the way. My 3 favorite are priorities change. I don't know if you remember these posts. working and getting older in the middle of nowhere, which was back in 2007. And I'm guessing you weren't in LA at the time. You were in
I was probably in North Dakota.
North Dakota.
I go to North Dakota a lot for work.
And how not to get in the way as an instructor, which is your points on sometimes overcoaching athletes are rarely said. How did you develop that idea that don't put so much information into their brains?
Well, my co-author on the book on Winning on the Ground, James Pedro Sr, is an amazing coach. And I learned a whole lot from him. And in fact, I ran into him. His son had gotten, I think, a bronze medal in the Olympics. And then later, his son went on to win the World Championships. But right at the time, little Jimmy was doing really well. And I ran into Jim at the high school nationals. And Rhonda had just started judo. She's probably 11 years old and a white belt. And I said, your son's doing really well. Do you have any suggestion for somebody who is a parent coaching their own kid? And he said, you always want to ask yourself, am I doing this for me or for my kid? And if you can answer honestly, you're doing it for your kid, you'll be okay as a coach and as a parent. He said too many people, whether they put him in a tournament that they're not ready for, they make him do more practices, they let him drop out, whatever. The decision's made based on what's best for them. And so I learned a lot from Jimmy. I used to call him for a while every day and ask him questions, and he was extremely generous with his time.
So Jim Pedro, is he still coaching out there?
Jim Pedro Sr, yeah, he was one of the coaches for the Olympics, and he had one of his students, Kayla Harrison, won a gold medal in the Olympics, and yeah, he's been really successful still.
We'll break up what a couple other ideas and points. So what do you credit mainly for you getting shit done and depositing that type of psychology on your children or your students? Like, you get shit done. It's simple as that.
There's two things. One of them is actually quite simple, and the other one is not. The one that's not, my older brother said to me that the real secret to success is putting what you want most ahead of what you want now. So often, you could screw up life, and I've told my kids this many times, you could screw up life in a big way. You get drunk, you run into a tree, you break your back, you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, you killed somebody, you're in jail. Or you can screw it up by the accumulation of small things. You don't study for this test, and so you do poorly, and so you don't get a good grade, and then you don't study for the next test, and you end up with a C average, and you can't get into a good college, and it just keeps going. There's any point in there you could turn it around. You could go to community college and make straight A's and get into it. But so many people, there's this pile up of putting what they want now, sitting on the couch watching Vampire Diaries, ahead of what they want most, getting into Harvard. And it's true for sports. It's true, one of the things that I used to say when I was living at the Olympic Training Center is everybody wants to win the day of the match. You need to win at 5:30 in the morning, bad enough to get out of bed. So there's that, and it's easy to say, put what you want most ahead of what you want now. But I tell you, having a lot of those 5:30 a.m.s when the alarm went off and I laid there and did not want to get out of bed. So I think that's a constant decision you make every day. And it's easier when you're an athlete, because when you're an athlete, it's very clear. I want to win that gold medal. You wake up in the morning, is me getting up and running those sprints uphill going to help you win? Yes. If it doesn't, then you can go back to sleep. But when you become a parent or when you run a business like 7th Generation Games, is it more profitable for the company for me to spend time talking to you so people know about the game, or working on developing another level? It isn't that clear. So it gets harder. But it's certainly clear that what's going to help me most is not being on Facebook for the next hour. So I think there's putting what you want now behind what you want most. So that's the harder thing, because it's hard sometimes to be vigilant on that, and it's also hard to always know. But the easier thing, and like you said, I write a blog at statistics, but every now and then, like I did this thing on my blog, 55 things, leading up to my 55th birthday, 55 things I've learned in 55 years. And I would say one of them that was the most useful is always do one more thing. So when it's late at night and I want to go to bed, and usually I work till about 1 or 2 in the morning, I'll do one more thing. I'll write another blog post. I'll try and fix one little thing on the game, that this web page doesn't look quite right. Or, I'll answer a few emails. So I'll spend, right when I'm ready to knock it off, I'll spend another half hour on stuff. Well, if you take a half hour, 365 days a year, that's 180 hours. That's another month. So one of the ways I get so much more work done is I have a 13-month year. And that's an easy habit to adopt.
Wow. That's tough. That's tenacity. Couple things going through my mind quickly is I've heard you talk about Vampire Diaries a couple of times. Is that like Julia's favorite show?
Yes.
So like, get off, watch Vampire
Diaries. Yes. Get off the couch, quit watching Vampire Diaries, study your calculus.
And it's everything you said, all up into that creeping type, slowly just not doing the right thing. All of a sudden you're settled into that mode, and 30 years later, your life is nowhere where you want it to be. Another question that I had, and I'm probably sure a lot of people had. Do you have like a common guide of like, this is what lesson I'm going to teach the students every day, not just in judo, or like, okay, Ronda's 5, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and try to teach her this lesson? Or your oldest daughter, is there like time frames where you're like, I have to deliver this life lesson that I've distilled over years and years? Or is it just as it comes? Is there a game plan?
There's a very definite game plan when I'm teaching judo. There's a very definite game plan when I'm teaching statistics, or when I'm writing the games that teach math. With the kids, it's not that so much, because every kid is different. I mean, I have 4 daughters. My oldest daughter was a sports writer for many years for ESPN and Fox News Latino, and then we hired her as the chief marketing officer for our company recently.
Nice.
My second daughter teaches middle school history in downtown LA, and she's amazing. And my third daughter is a professional athlete and actor. And my 4th daughter is, in her going into her junior year of high school tomorrow. So they're all different. They all have different interests. So I don't think you do your children a service when you try and fit them into a mold. Like, I know people that they're really good judo coaches or soccer coaches or whatever, and every one of their kids is going to do that sport, and every one of their kids is going to do this. And I don't think that's it. The thing that I did try to do with all of them, I think the more your children are exposed to language early, the more language they hear from you, the more they get read to, the better off they are. And, when they were little, I would be, even when they were small, take them to the grocery store, and they'd be sitting in the cart, not even, old enough to walk around. And I'd be saying things like, we're getting apples. Here's 3 apples. Here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. And just constantly teaching them on the fly. And that really helps. I try to take them, expose them to lots of experiences in life, and hope that one of those things will resonate with them. Because I read something once about people who won the Nobel Prize, and it said they weren't always, in fact, they weren't even usually the straight A students that got perfect grades and everything, but what they did is they found something that they were interested in, and they followed that thing. So I try to expose them to enough different things that they find something.
Yeah. Also, are you done with that thought? But Albert Einstein actually talked late, like Ronda. Maybe she's a super genius. She is a super genius. You've said she's fantastic in mathematics and science.
Yes. She's really smart.
Are your daughters different in that way, where one will be really good at maybe a particular topic, writing? Maria is just born writer.
Yes.
She was just writing everything.
When somebody asked her when she knew she wanted to be a writer, she said, I think it was when I picked up a pencil in the 2nd grade, wrote my first story.
Wow.
And yeah, Rhonda, it was just like pulling teeth for her to sit down and do her English homework, but she could do her math homework and just like flip through the pages and be like, oh, that's the square root of 47, and just do it like that. And Maria was the opposite. In fact, when she was in college, she called home and she asked me a question about some math problem, and I said, how could you have made it through calculus and got a B plus in it and not know this. You know, it sounded like how to compute a percentage. And she says, Mom, let me tell you how I got through calculus. I went to the teacher because I was making a 65%. And I said, how about I do something for extra credit? And the teacher said, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, I could write a biography of a famous woman mathematician. So she negotiated this with the teacher. She wrote a brilliant paper, and the teacher gave her an extra 20% credit, and that's how she got a B plus. So she never did learn calculus, but she had some good negotiating skills and some, you know, and like I said, she's a brilliant writer. So every one of them is very different, yes.
So yeah, it's nature and nurture at the same time. I'm the youngest of four boys. And did you ever think about what it would be like if the girls were boys?
You know, it's hard to imagine. My oldest daughter is pregnant now, and she's going to have her third baby. It'll be a boy, and so that's going to be strange because he'll be the first boy in the family after four daughters and two granddaughters. So.
Your husband is so outnumbered. Oh, I mean, he really must get just thrown around that place.
Well, you know, it's funny because Dennis went to UCLA for his PhD in particle physics, and then my students used to call him Computer God. He's the other half of the development team at 7th Generation Games, and people think that, you know, we boss him around. Dennis doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. If he doesn't want to do it, he just doesn't.
Is he a judo practitioner?
God no. Dennis is like the least athletic person you'd ever meet. He can't even swim. And people always say, I can't believe you married somebody like that. But, you know, on the flip side of it, he's the kind of person, and I've seen him do this, walk through the room when one of the kids will be doing their homework and say, glance at the piece of paper while drinking his second martini of the day and say, that's a Fibonacci series. And, you know, they'll say, what do you mean? You can't just look at something. And he's brilliant.
Wow. So
I think everybody has different parts of their personality, and I have plenty of people around that to go out and work out with, but Dennis is somebody that I can, you know, I wrote a blog on my statistics blog about, you know, I knew I married the right person when, believe it or not everything is on Google. And I was upstairs trying to solve something, and I came across a reference in this article that said, you can find this equation, numerical recipes in C, which is a book. And I said to Dennis, I thought I'd seen it on his bookshelf. I said, hey, do you have a copy of Numerical Recipes in C? And he didn't say, what the hell are you talking about? He said, look on the bookshelf on the third shelf from the bottom. So, you know, he's very compatible in different aspects of life.
Yeah, that's a keeper.
Yeah.
Now, keeping on the parenting type topics, subjects, when you look at your daughter's husbands or boyfriends, do you put a lot of input? Do you try to guide them in their decision making when they pick partners?
Well, the one thing I've said is if you are dating somebody or somebody's your friend and everyone in your family hates them, unless your family is like the mafia or a bunch of really psycho people, you should take that as a clue. So you can tell yourself, oh, he's so cute and he's so nice. If everybody in your family hates him, you should think about that. And, you know, one of the things that I tell them is you can judge a person by how well they treat people who are not in a position to help them out. You know, you see a lot of people in Hollywood that, you know, Rhonda said it well, they're actors. They're good at acting like they like you, you know, whether they do or not. But if they're a jerk to the waiter or the waitress, if they're a jerk to their assistant, if they're, you know, a jerk to some fan that comes up to them. You know, Rhonda says she has written off Justin Bieber as an ass forever because they were at Cannes and at the film festival, and her 16-year-old sister asked Justin Bieber could she take a picture with him. He said no. And she said, you know what, that guy's an ass. Because if some 16-year-old kid comes up to me at a party, you know, it'd be one thing if she's like running to the bathroom, because sometimes she'll be in an event, it takes her 45 minutes to get to the bathroom because so many people stop her, and after a while you have to tell somebody no, because otherwise it's going to be a memorable moment for different reasons, you know. But yeah, to just blow people off, you're a jerk.
I agree, and it can go the other way too far. If they keep bothering Rhonda, she can't conduct her normal life. So if there's any super fans out there, make sure, you know, it's great to take a picture with Rhonda, but if she's not in a fan expo or she's just walking down the street, do people just mob her now?
Yeah, but she doesn't mind. I mean, if she's not in a hurry to go somewhere, like if we're just, you know, going to dinner, she'll stop and sign 15, 20, 30 autographs, but not for the same person. Because if you want 30 of them, you're selling them on eBay. But no, she'll stop and shake hands with people and take pictures, and she says that's how I can afford to, you know, feed my dog and live by the beach in Venice because of these people. So I think she has a very good attitude about it that way. And, you know, we were just thinking about this last night because, you know, of course, Robin Williams passed away and he was very successful. And, you know, it was very sad. There's, of course, living in LA, you're always hearing about people in Hollywood who are in rehab or getting arrested, or, you know, people who seem to have it all. And I think one thing that's kept Ronda pretty much on the even keel is nobody in our family takes anything from her. When we go to UFC events, we all pay our own way. We buy our own plane tickets. We pay for our own hotel rooms. And we all have jobs. Nobody is making a living off of her. It's not like she bought my house. And so people can tell her to her face if she's screwing up, or, you know, if she's getting a little too in love with herself. And also, she doesn't have to feel like, well, if I screw up, you know, my whole family is going to be out on the street. I told her last night, I said, you know, it's a good movie and all that, but keep in mind, if it all goes away tomorrow, you could live in a townhouse by the beach and design computer games. This is your fallback plan. So it's not too bad, you know?
That's fantastic. And it's, I guess she has a completely different outlook on life, where Robin Williams, this is obviously a great loss. I don't know if you're familiar with his story as of late, but he had a lot of addiction problems and had relapsed recently after being clean for like 20 years. And it's just these crazy things, but sometimes I think if you're not focused in on giving back to people, you can easily start making up demons in your own mind. And you and Ronda, you contribute a lot on YouTube, which I love. I don't know if you see that similarities. Ronda, early on, after she did Joe Rogan's podcast for the first time, she did a lot of these videos with different organizations. I don't know if you're familiar with Hanato Laranja. Do you know that name?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So a lot of underground videos and also showing techniques, lots of techniques. And then you do the same thing. If they search you on YouTube, you're showing techniques. You're showing the strawberry video. Do you remember that one?
Strawberry.
You're eating chocolate strawberries and you're getting crumbs on, and you're talking about how this is the biggest problem I have today. And sometimes you need videos like that. What drives you to do that? You don't have to do any of this. Why do you continue to want to, I guess, help?
Well, yeah, there's a couple. There's different reasons. Like the reason we wrote the book and the reason that we do some of the videos is when I started judo, I was living in a little town in the Midwest. And then I moved to St. Louis, Missouri, which is a big place in the Midwest, but still not when you think of, you know, a hotbed of judo. St. Louis, Missouri doesn't pop to mind. And I didn't have the opportunity to work with a lot of very well-known coaches. My first judo coach was a guy who was in Japan with the Air Force, got his, you know, first degree black belt in judo in a few years, and came back home and taught kids in the local area. So he was a terrific coach. You know, God love him for, you know, bringing me into the sport, but he had only gone so far himself and could only take me so far. So Jimmy and I wrote the book that we wished we had had when we were younger. And I think very often in this country, the rich get richer, whether you're talking about education, whether you're talking about sports. People who already have a lot, everybody's out to help them out. You know, when Ronda was competing in judo and my little Julia was just, you know, 7 or 8 competing, everybody was there to help Ronda. But nobody wanted to help Julia work on her foot sweeps, right? But she's the one that really needs it. So with the book, the videos, the computer game I do, it's kind of all got that same thread of I try to think about what could have helped me when I was that age, when I was trying to be successful, and put it out there. And 99% of people will not take advantage of it. Sylvester Stallone said something to Ronda once, which she mentioned it to me, and I thought that's brilliant because it describes a lot of martial arts and maybe a lot of sports too. He said, in the entertainment business, you have a lot of people with mediocre talent and huge egos. Well, I think that's true in martial arts. It's probably true in sports in general. You know, you see these little league coaches that think they are God's gift to the universe. And it's, dude, you had a bunch of 10-year-olds won the state championships. who cares? You know, in the great scheme of things, what difference does it make? If you are on a movie and you know, I meet these people, and it's funny because I go to these Hollywood things every now and then, like this premiere, you know, stuff that Ronda is at, or she'll have an after party, and people say, oh, and I live next door to, you know, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah is my client. And I'll say, oh, I live next door to Shannon and Deborah Brock. And you can see them thinking, you know, what movie were they in? What did he produce? And, you know, they're just very nice people that live next door.
That's hilarious. You guys are funny. I have a bunch of quick fire questions I wanted to ask you. And maybe we can pull back to a couple topics. But if you had an entrance song, say you were currently fighting in the UFC, okay, what would your entrance song be?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because before I went off to the World Championships, Ronda's dad made me a tape because, you know, back then we had Walkman and we didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, the song I used to always listen to, the two songs I used to always listen to before I went out to compete were Hit Me With Your Best Shot.
Pat Benatar, yes.
And We Are the Champions.
We Are the Queen. Beautiful. That would be a long song, long entrance. What, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be, if anything?
Yeah, it's hard to say because a lot of times things are connected, you know? Like I used to tell Ronda, gee, if I hadn't hurt my knee when I was young, maybe I would have won the World Championships 2 or 3 times. You know, I had a half dozen surgeries while I was competing. I, you know, had my knee replaced a few years ago. And Ronda said, well, maybe, or maybe you just would have been a kind of good, you know, Seoinage player, just like everybody else. So it's hard to say. I mean, certainly, if I could change anything in the world, I would have had my husband not die.
Well, obviously.
Then Ronda points out, well, if you did that, you know, we never would have had Julia. You know, I'd probably be living in North Dakota, married, and had 3 kids. So it's hard to say because everything is connected to everything else. You know, I would like somebody to invest $1 million in my company so that we could hire another developer.
Well, I won't be able to do that one, but
you know, even when I say that, we haven't sold any equity in our company. We try to. I think that's the thing. You give up. You don't give up until you have to. So even though there's a lot of things that I would like, you know, an extra $1 million. There are people I could ask for that. Sure. So I think if there's anything I really wanted, I would have done it.
Sure. A couple ideas about the game. I'm sure you get a million of these ideas. And the reason why I put Hunter Motz and you on the same Twitter link, because Hunter, I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Callen's show. Are you? Ronda was on it one time.
Yeah.
Hunter Motz has a book. It's called The Straight A Conspiracy. It sounds different. It's just empowering children to really work, and that there's not a lot of special kids out there. There's kids that work harder than others, and you put in the work mainly. And he always talks about education will change when Taylor Swift tells kids to go out there and study and do really well in school. And I thought that you being on the podcast and also with Ronda's celebrity, she'll be able to tell the younger generation that it's really important to get your education, because you could be left behind and not realize it. And like you've said in the past, if you hang out with the cool kids in the back, you don't understand how seriously dangerous it could be for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to keep on pressing Hunter. I'm sure he's going to love to have it. Brian will probably throw a lot of jokes in there for you. Any thoughts on that? And also the 7th generation game. Do you know what the Oculus Rift is?
I've heard of it.
It goes around your eyes, and it's a 3D world. It's starting to come out for just average people, probably $200 or $300 a unit, and the software probably has to be particularized to that. But then you can also play with other people in different areas and start making. Did you ever think about bringing this game online?
Well, right now, our next plan, it runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, and our next plan is to run on iPads. As far as playing the game online, we would have to change some things. We've given it some thought, but you know how I said that we're a country where the rich get richer, whether it's education or money or training. Well, we want to make our games accessible to everybody. The kid in an Indian reservation, North Dakota, the kid in East LA. And a lot of those kids don't have high bandwidth internet connection. So to have a 3D game that runs online, you would have to have a really high bandwidth internet connection and often a computer with really good graphics processing. And so we tend to make our games so that the kid who's using the $100 computer their mom bought at a garage sale, it will run on it.
Wow.
And so that means that it doesn't look as cool as World of Warcraft, but we're trying to make it accessible. I met with a venture capitalist in March and he called me a communist because I said, we want to make money, but we're not willing to do just anything to make money. We're not outsourcing to India. We pay our staff a good wage. We try to make things, we sell our games for less than $10 so kids can afford them. We get a lot of people to donate games so that we can give them to kids that can't afford them or to low-income schools. And so I think, though, in the long run, because when I look at how technology is now from 25 years ago when I started making games and they were just text-based, and so I kind of went away from it, I'm sure that in 7 or 10 years, there will be that technology that makes it cheap and available for us to do that. So I'm sure we will do that eventually, but it's not the first thing on our radar right now.
Okay. Just a couple quick, I know you're extremely busy. When you think of the word successful, is there any particular person or concept that pops into your mind? Obviously, I feel you're extremely successful. You've said this in the past that you're the richest mother ever because your daughters are all healthy, happy, and doing well. But is there a particular role model you might have had?
There's not a particular role model, but Emmy Werner, who did a lot of research on children who had multiple risk factors and yet developed well, said you have to define what does it mean to be a success. And she said we went with people who learn well, live well, and love well. If you have good relationships in your life, if you can learn new things, you do well academically, you do well professionally, you have a job, you can, you set goals for yourself and achieve them, that those are the people who are successful. And, you said the straight A conspiracy, and I found that interesting because I think there's a distinction between learning and making straight A's. And I think that we're really in the wrong direction in this country. We have those parents that have their children lockstep. I wrote a blog post where I got a lot of support and a lot of hate mail. There was that book on, the woman saying why Chinese mothers are superior. And I said, I don't believe that at all. I think you can regiment your child into a box and coordinate their, choreograph their day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. from the time they're 5 until they go off to MIT. And that child is living your dream. And I had a very successful friend say something to me once before he quit his very well-paying job and divorced his wife, and he was at a software company. And he said to me, I feel like I'm living the American dream, but it's somebody else's dream.
Wow.
And I think that we're making a big mistake letting kids into our top universities only if they have straight A's, if they've got perfect SAT scores, because that used to be those were the kids who were really fascinated by those subjects and learned so much because they really pursued something they were interested in. Now it's not. It's kids who were boxed into that. And I think the people who are successful are the people like my husband, are the people like me, like my daughters, who I can't wait every day to get up and go to work and do the things I want to do. If I could ask for one thing in life, it would be a 36, 48-hour day so I could do more of the stuff I'm doing. I don't think that success is getting a job that you don't want to do so you can buy a lot of stuff you don't really want to impress people that you don't really like.
Wow. You're so quotable. You should definitely put more of these on Twitter. And you should get the straight A conspiracy. Obviously, you don't need it. But for a lot of children, there's one great comparison. I teach a lot of basic kickboxers. And when they're first starting out, it's easier for them to duplicate technique just like judo because they can see the technique. They see you do it. But if Rhonda's in my math class and she automatically knows an answer to a problem, I might, or she doesn't automatically know, you might have gone over with her at home. She did all this stuff, but all of a sudden, like, she knows that I don't know it. That means I'm bad at math. And then I spend an entire lifetime telling myself I'm bad at math, not even cracking the book open. It would be a good synergy with you guys together.
Well, I tell the kids that I teach at Gompers all the time, you guys are going to go to college, you know, you're going to sit next to kids that know all this stuff that you don't know. And you're going to start thinking, oh, I'm dumb, they're smarter than me. That's not the case. Those kids had tutoring after school from the time they were 8. They had weekend classes to study for the SATs. They had all the books that you guys couldn't afford. That's what they had. And that's why they're ahead of you. It's not that they're smarter than you. And if you study, you can do it. Maybe when you get into school, and I want to set them up for this because it's true. You know, we say all this bullshit in this country about, oh, if you just study hard, you would get a scholarship. Well, often those kids who are in East LA and South Central, they may be studying hard, but they don't have even textbooks to take home because the schools can't afford them. They don't have a computer at home. They don't have parents to take them to SAT study classes, even if they're free. So they go to schools that have fewer school days. You know, my daughter Julia complains and complains about how her school starts early and ends late. Well, if you get an extra month of school every year, by the time you graduate, you've had 13 more months. You've had another year and a half of school. You add all those advantages up, and kids like my kids are way ahead of those kids in South Central, those kids in the Bronx. It's not because they're smarter. And so I try and tell the kids this so that they know when they go to college and that kid from Malibu is way ahead of them, this is why. Don't give up. You know, keep doing it. And I think we don't tell kids that enough.
This is why we need your book on parenting. So will you, even if you took somebody like your daughter and went through the blog and just started pulling apart different pieces of advice, and if anybody hasn't seen the blog, you should go. For me, it's incredible because you list out everything, and the way you format it, I could tell you put a ton of work into it. But you kind of put little reviews, you put little lists for everybody to remember. But a parenting book, can we lock you down on that commitment?
Well, you know, it's funny. This is how I ended up doing the judo book. This friend of mine, Roy Hash, is a really good judo coach in Texas, says to me and Jim Pedro, you know, AnnMarie, you write this blog, Jim does this article on coaching every month, you know, this column, you guys should put it together and write a book. And we're like, sure, we can do that. How hard could it be? So 2 years later, I mean, it's not like we worked on it continuously for 2 years, but it takes a lot more because, for one thing, with the blog, you can put something on there. Somebody has a question, they write you and say, well, I'm not really clear what you meant there. You put it up there, and then a day or two later, you say, I don't think I explained that really well. And then you can go back and edit it. Where when you have a book out, it's done. Nobody can, well, they can email you about it, but you know, really the book has to be a much more finished product and stand on its own than a blog. And so what I found is that taking your blog and turning it into a book is a lot more work than you think. And then the other thing is, to be truthful, I mean, like the money that I make off winning on the ground, the first royalty check I sent into Children of the Night, which is an organization to help children who are in the sex trade, kids, and they take them off the street and they have a dormitory, a school, and all that. And then the second check I got, I used to pay for expenses for the Gompers middle school team. But it doesn't pay a lot of money, and like I said, I'm not really a communist. You know,
It could, if we had a parenting book, I think we can push it. Also, if that judo book was expanded into the audio version on Audible, because all of these podcasts, all of these audio listeners, of course, they'll be PDFs. But if we had your voice or somebody's voice explaining the techniques as an audio version, and for me, for a book, I'll pay $19.95 all day long if I got one fantastic idea from your parenting book. I feel like you're putting so much work into the blog, I should be paying you for something. So I was like, I better start just buying these books, or we will do something maybe for one of the charities, many charities that you guys are working with. Is there a preferred method of donating back besides getting your books?
If you go to the Armbar Nation site, it's really simple. It's www.armbarnation.com. There's usually some charitable activity that's going on there. There's a donate button. Also, I think on 7 Generation Games, I'd have to look at the website.
Yeah, you can donate games.
We're redoing our website right now. That's why like we're literally in the middle of it. But you can donate a game to a kid. You can donate a school license. And then, like I said, on the Armbar Nation site, they're also often doing auctions or things. Rhonda's really good about donating her stuff, her fight gear, things like that, and auctioning it off. And then that money will go to, say, St. John the Baptist Church. They just built a new chapel. We're very Catholic.
I did want. So you have you maintain a strong belief in God.
Yes.
Is that extremely helpful? Because me, I struggle with this in a lot of these interviews I've done with different scientists. The last astrophysicist, he was an atheist. I interviewed Coach Bill from the documentary Undefeated. He's got very religious, and I'm just trying to find my way through this world. Do you have a viewpoint on why we're here in the first place?
Well, my grandmother is very, very Catholic, and when sometimes things would be difficult. I would lose a match, which doesn't seem to be a big deal, but to me at the time, when you're trying to be best in the world, I mean, losing it just feels like you died. Rhonda made a comment one time that she would die in the cage if she had to, and I know that feeling. And I would call my grandmother, and she would say the same thing, whether it's I had lost a match or my husband passed away or whatever happened, and she would say to me, Mija, God knows what he's doing even when you don't. And Nanny lived her life that way. She truly believed that God has a plan for you, and if you work hard and do the right thing to the best of your knowledge, that it will all work out. And so far that has been true. So and my mom says, how can you be an atheist if you look around at the world, whether it's butterflies or sunset or anything, and believe that that's just coincidence? I mean, as a statistician, the millions of things that have to happen for that to come about. And then people say on the flip side of that, well, look at these people getting killed in Syria. Look at all the horrible things that happen. How can you say that, there's a God if that happens? And it always goes back to what my grandmother said, that, when you said to me, what would you change about yourself? And, one of the things that both Rhonda and Maria, my oldest daughter, talk about is that when they look back, the worst things that have happened in their lives, that often the best things come out of that. I'm not a big country music fan, but when I was teaching years ago, I had a student who wrote a paper and did a presentation and talk about a moral education, character education. And they start out with this song, Unanswered Prayers. And I'm thinking, okay, great. But they did a wonderful presentation. And it's basically about how this guy, when when his girlfriend left him, thought that it was the end of the world. And he prayed so much, and how could God let him down, that he lost this girl. And then he sees her when he's with, years later, with his wife and his wonderful 2 kids. And so even when really horrible things happen, like your dad dying, sometimes better things come out of it. And what my grandmother's point is the world is so complicated. You can't understand it, but that's what faith is believing that it will work out.
Wow. That's powerful. I don't want to keep you a minute longer because I'm sure you're...
Oh, yeah. I do have a meeting coming up.
And that was like, wow, I just opened up that trap door. We'll have to get you back at a later time. Is there any, besides the books, we're going to do an intro and an exit segment, and we're going to pump this up as much as possible on YouTube. Not that, we need to do it. Is there any particular thing that you want to get out there besides the 7 generation games? Is obviously that's designed for children.
Right.
The judo book, you want to send people to Armbar Nation? Do you want to have Twitter followers? How do you want to basically what do you want to push here? Anything?
I would say that 7 generation games, it's something that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And if anybody can go there, and if you have kids or kids, and get them a copy of the game, if you want to donate it to kids, because that's what's going to make a difference in your life. I tell my kids all the time, we can live by the beach in Santa Monica. I have a gold medal from the World Championships and a PhD, and one of those 2 things make that possible. And it's not the medal. That so many kids fall behind. Like you said, they're in the third grade, they're in the fourth grade, and they think, I can't do this. And it changes their trajectory in life. And the littlest thing that you could do, if somebody could be good enough at math that they could have that confidence, do well in high school, go to college, it opens up a world. They can do chemistry, they can do so many things. And you know, people say, oh, kids are digital natives. That's bullshit. There's a big difference between posting on Facebook how drunk you got last night and designing Facebook. We need more kids who are not, you know, looking like Mark Zuckerberg, that kids that look like me, or kids that look like those kids in South Central or on American Indian reservations, thinking, I could make games, I could design whatever's going to replace the internet. And so that's what we're trying to do. So any way that you could back that up, if you're a teacher and you want to use the game in your class, if you want your class to work with us to design something, a lot of the things in the game come from kids that say, oh, that river, I would like to canoe in that. So the next game has a canoeing scene, Fish Lake. I mean, that's powerful for a kid to see this was something in your brain and now it's real. So if anybody wants to work with us on the game, if they want to use it, it's a chance to make a difference in a real way, not in your ego that I'm the coach and you're up there getting a medal, but that 20 years from now, you have a good life instead of being in prison because I helped you on that right path. So that's what I do, why I do it.
God bless that family. You guys are fantastic. I really can't believe it. I hope that all the daughters and you and your husband and everybody have fantastic success. And I'm guessing from where you're at, if Ronda continues on her path, she's probably going to be governor and maybe president.
That would be cool.
So I want to let you go.